Admiral Jake stood at the main window of Harmony Station, watching ships from 47 different worlds dock at the massive space station. The year was 2387, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for almost 300 years. Jake felt proud every time he saw the Earth flag flying alongside the banners of ancient alien races. The station buzzed with activity as delegates prepared for another council meeting. Jake had attended hundreds of these meetings over his 20-year career. Today felt different, though. Today, Dr. Lisa Carter would present evidence that could change everything. Lisa walked into the observation deck carrying a data pad. Her face looked tired but determined. She had spent months gathering proof of what she suspected was happening to human colonies in the outer regions of the galaxy. "Are you ready for this?" Jake asked her. Lisa nodded. "The evidence is clear. 3 different species have been conducting illegal experiments on our people. They have been testing new diseases on Colony 7. They have been taking children from Settlement Prime for behavioral studies. The architects have been using our miners as test subjects for their new technologies." Jake felt his stomach turn. These were supposed to be their allies, their friends in the galaxy. How long has this been going on? "At least 50 years, Lisa replied. "Maybe longer. They've been very careful to hide it, but I found the records." The 2 humans made their way to the main council chamber. The room was enormous, with seating for delegates from every member species. They sat in their crystal pods, their bodies glowing with soft blue light. They floated in their gas-filled containers, their tentacles moving slowly as they communicated through chemical signals. The architects towered over everyone else, their silicon bodies looking like living rock formations. At the center of the chamber sat the Council Prime, a being so old that no one remembered what species it originally came from. Its voice echoed through the chamber as it called the meeting to order. "Today we hear from the human delegation regarding alleged violations of the Galactic Treaty," the Council Prime announced. Lisa stepped forward and activated her data pad. Holographic displays filled the chamber, showing medical records, communication logs, and video evidence. The images were horrifying. Human colonists strapped to tables while alien scientists injected them with unknown substances. Children being separated from their families and subjected to psychological tests. Workers in mines being exposed to dangerous radiation levels while aliens took notes. "These crimes have been committed by members of this very council," Lisa said, her voice steady despite her anger. "Our people trusted you. They welcomed you to their worlds, and you repaid that trust by treating them like laboratory animals." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some delegates looked shocked, others appeared uncomfortable. The accused species remained silent. The representative finally spoke, its voice like crystal bells ringing. "These accusations are false. Humans have always been prone to paranoia and aggression. This is clearly an attempt to justify expansion of their military forces." "I have documented proof," Lisa insisted. "Medical records with signatures, communication logs between researchers, video recordings from architect facilities." "Fabricated evidence," the delegate bubbled through its translator. "Humans excel at deception. They learned it from their violent history." Jake stepped forward. "Our history? You want to talk about history? Every species in this chamber has fought wars. Every species has made mistakes, but we've moved beyond that. We've been peaceful members of this council for 3 centuries. The architect delegate's voice rumbled like an earthquake. "Peaceful? Your species destroyed entire ecosystems on your own planet before joining us. You wage war against your own kind. Violence is in your nature." "That was centuries ago," Jake protested. "We've grown, we've changed." But he could see it was too late. The chamber filled with angry voices, not directed at the accused species but at humanity itself. Delegate after delegate stood to speak about human aggression, human violence, human danger to galactic peace. The prosecutor approached the central podium. For too long, we have ignored the warning signs. Humans expand faster than any other species. They consume more resources. They ask more questions. They push boundaries that should not be pushed. Their colonies report higher crime rates than any other species. Their military grows stronger each year. Because we need to defend ourselves, Jake said, but his voice was lost in the growing chaos. The evidence before us today proves what many have long suspected, the prosecutor continued. Humans will say anything, fabricate any evidence to justify their aggressive nature. They accuse us of crimes to distract from their own guilt. Lisa tried to speak again to present more evidence, but no one would listen. The vote was called quickly. One by one, species after species voted to condemn humanity. The crystal beings glowed brighter as they cast their votes. The gas dwellers released clouds of approval chemicals. The rock-like architects simply stood, their silence counting as agreement. When the final tally was announced, Jake felt the universe shift beneath his feet. 46 species had voted to exile humanity from the galaxy. Only Earth had voted against the measure. The Council Prime's ancient voice filled the chamber. By the authority of the Galactic Council, humanity is hereby banned from all galactic space. Earth and all human colonies will be contained behind an energy barrier. Any attempt to leave this containment will result in immediate destruction. Jake watched in horror as the chamber emptied. Centuries of cooperation, of friendship, of shared exploration ended in a single afternoon. As the alien delegates filed out, many avoided looking at the human representatives. Within hours, the barrier activated. Jake stood once again at Harmony Station's window, but now he watched the last human ships fleeing back to Earth before the energy wall sealed them in. The stars that had welcomed humanity for 300 years now became prison bars. Jake opened a communication channel to Earth, knowing it would be his last transmission to the galaxy beyond. This is Admiral Jake to all human colonies and Earth Command. They have made their choice. They think they know what monsters look like. They're about to learn the difference between monsters and humans who have nothing left to lose. The barrier completed its formation, cutting Earth off from the galaxy it had once helped protect. In the darkness of space, 47 species celebrated their victory over human aggression, never imagining that they had just created something far more dangerous than anything they had feared before. 25 years had passed since the galaxy locked Earth away like a dangerous animal. The world that existed behind the energy barrier was nothing like the Earth that had been exiled. President Cole walked through the underground tunnels that connected the major cities, watching thousands of workers move with purpose that would have amazed the aliens who thought they had broken humanity's spirit. The old countries no longer existed. America, Russia, China, and all the others had dissolved into something new called the Earth Federation. Every human on the planet now worked toward a single goal that burned in their hearts like a flame that could not be put out. They would return to the galaxy, but not as the same species that had been cast out. Dr. Brooks led through the Phoenix Research Center, the largest scientific facility ever built by humans. It stretched for miles beneath the Rocky Mountains, powered by fusion reactors that made the sun seem small. Had been a young graduate student when the exile began. Now his hair was gray, but his eyes still burned with the same intensity that had driven him to work 18-hour days for 2.5 decades. "Show me what we've accomplished," said as they walked past laboratories filled with equipment that would have seemed like magic to the humans of the past. Smiled the expression both proud and terrible. "We've done more than survive, Madam President. We've evolved. Look at this." He led her to a massive viewing window that looked down into a chamber the size of a football stadium. Inside, a prototype starship hung in the air, its hull gleaming with technologies that no alien species had ever imagined. "We took everything we learned during our 300 years with the Council," explained. "Every piece of technology, every scientific principle, every engineering technique. Then we improved it. We made it better. We made it ours. The ship below them was beautiful in the way that predators are beautiful. Its lines were clean and deadly, designed not for exploration or trade like the old human vessels, but for war. Could see weapons systems that looked like they could tear apart entire fleets, engines that could move faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen, and armor that seemed to absorb light itself. "How many ships do we have?" asked. "The orbital shipyards are producing 50 ships every month," replied. "We've built over 1,000 already, each one more advanced than the last. Engineer Danny Lewis has redesigned our entire manufacturing process. We can build ships in weeks that would have taken the old Earth years to complete." They walked deeper into the facility, past laboratories where scientists worked on projects that would have terrified the aliens who had condemned humanity. Weapons that could turn a planet's atmosphere into poison. Shields that could hide entire fleets from any sensor. Engines that could fold space itself. "And our people," asked, "are they ready?" His expression grew serious. "Come see for yourself." They took an elevator to the surface, emerging into what had once been Denver. The city looked nothing like it had 25 years ago. The buildings were taller, stronger, and every one of them could be converted into a fortress within hours. Children played in the parks, but their games were different now. They played strategy games that would challenge military commanders. They built toys that looked like starships and talked about the day they would see the galaxy. Captain Helen Ward met them at the military training center. Helen had been a junior officer when the exile began, but now she commanded Earth's entire military force. She was tall and lean, with scars on her hands from years of training with every weapon humans had ever invented. "Our forces are ready," Helen reported as they watched soldiers practice combat maneuvers that combined human tactics with alien fighting styles. "We've studied every species that voted against us. We know their weaknesses, their fears, their battle strategies. We've prepared for every possible scenario." Watched a group of soldiers disassemble and reassemble alien weapons while blindfolded. Another group practiced zero-gravity combat in a chamber that simulated the interior of alien ships. Everyone moved with the precision of people who had spent their entire adult lives preparing for a single moment. "They took our children from us," Helen continued, her voice cold as space itself. "They experimented on our people. They treated us like animals. Every soldier in our forces has lost someone to their cruelty. They're not just fighting for Earth anymore. They're fighting for justice." The three leaders walked to the edge of the city, where they could see the energy barrier that surrounded Earth's solar system. It hummed with power, a wall of light that had kept humanity trapped for 25 years. But it also kept the galaxy from seeing what humanity had become. "We've intercepted their communication," said. "They divided our colonies among themselves like prizes. Colony 7 is now a research station. Settlement Prime has become a breeding ground. Our people are slaves, and the galaxy celebrates their victory over human aggression." Nodded grimly. "Every intercepted message makes our people more determined. They thought they were punishing us, but they gave us something more valuable than freedom. They gave us unity. They gave us purpose." Helen pointed to the barrier. "Our intelligence indicates that they check the barrier's integrity only once every few years. They're confident that it's permanent, that we've accepted our fate. They have no idea that we've been preparing for this moment since the day they locked us away." Felt the weight of leadership on her shoulders. In a few more months, their preparations would be complete. The barrier would fall, and humanity would return to the galaxy. But they would not return as the cooperative junior partners they had once been. They would return as something the galaxy had never seen before. "Are we ready to become what they feared we were?" asked. And Helen exchanged glances. "We're ready to become what they made us," Helen replied. "They wanted monsters. They created something far worse. They created humans with nothing left to lose and everything to prove." Above them, the barrier continued to hum with alien energy, holding Earth prisoner. But inside that prison, humanity had transformed itself into something that would make the galaxy remember why humans had once been respected, feared, and ultimately betrayed. The long dark was almost over. Soon, the galaxy would see what 25 years of exile had created. And when that day came, the species that had condemned humanity would learn the hardest lesson of all, that caging a dangerous animal doesn't make it less dangerous. It just makes it angrier. The barrier around Earth's solar system flickered once, then died completely. For the first time in 25 years, the sun's light reached out into open space without hitting an energy wall. Admiral Kate stood on the bridge of the Retribution, humanity's new flagship, watching as the prison that had held them for so long finally fell. "All ships report ready, Admiral," her communications officer announced. Behind them, 1,000 human warships waited in perfect formation. These were not the exploration vessels that had once carried humans to distant worlds. These were predators, built for one purpose only. Kate had been a child when the exile began. She grew up in the underground cities, learning mathematics and warfare with equal dedication. Now she commanded the most powerful fleet humanity had ever assembled. Her ships moved through space like shadows, their hulls absorbing light and sensor beams. The galaxy had forgotten what human ships looked like. They would remember soon enough. "Target confirmed, Admiral," her tactical officer reported. "Station, bearing 27 Mark 5. Intelligence indicates they're holding approximately 300 human prisoners." Kate's jaw tightened. Station was where they conducted their medical experiments. For 25 years, they had been cutting open human colonists to study their biology. The reports that had reached Earth through intercepted communications made Kate sick to her stomach. "All ships, this is Admiral," she broadcast to her fleet. "Today we remind the galaxy what it means to hurt humans. No mercy for those who showed none to our people." The human fleet moved towards station like a school of deadly fish. The station was massive, built into an asteroid and defended by warships that sparkled with crystal armor. They had always believed their superior technology made them invincible. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Enemy ships detected," the station's commander broadcast in the musical language of his people. "Unknown vessels approaching. Identify yourselves or be destroyed." Kate smiled coldly. "This is Admiral Kate of the Earth Federation Navy. You have something that belongs to us." Silence filled the communication channel, then panic. "Impossible, humans are contained. Your ships cannot be here." "Fire," Kate ordered. The human fleet opened fire with weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Beams of pure energy that cut through shields like paper. Missiles that turned enemy armor into dust. The crystal ships of the, once so beautiful and proud, shattered like glass under the human assault. Dr. Price led the rescue teams that boarded the station while it burned around them. He was a medical officer, but he had trained for combat like every human in the fleet. His teams moved through the station's corridors, finding the laboratories where their people had been tortured for decades. "My God," one of his medics whispered as they entered a room filled with surgical tables. The humans strapped to those tables were barely alive, their bodies covered in scars from years of experimentation. "Get them out of here," ordered, his voice shaking with rage. "All of them. Every single human on this station comes home with us." The rescue took 17 minutes. When the human fleet departed, station was nothing but burning wreckage floating in space. No survivors were left to tell their government what had happened. The humans wanted their return to be a surprise. Captain Grace Mitchell commanded the second wave of attacks. Her strike force hit 3 military bases at the same time, using the new human technology that could fold space itself. They never saw the attacks coming. One moment their bases were secure, the next they were clouds of expanding gas. Grace had lost her entire family to experiments. Her parents and brother had been taken from Settlement Prime when she was just 10 years old. She never saw them again. The rage that had built up inside her for 25 years finally had a target. Target destroyed, her weapons officer reported after the third base disappeared. No enemy survivors detected. Good, Grace replied. On to the next target. News of the attacks spread through the galaxy's communication networks like wildfire. The Galactic Council called emergency meetings, demanding to know how humans had escaped their prison. They sent investigation teams to where the barrier had been, but found nothing except empty space and the wreckage of their monitoring stations. Colonel Pete Davis led the ground assault on Titan's Edge, a mining world where humans had been enslaved by the architects. His Marines landed on the planet's surface in ships that moved faster than sound, their armor glowing with the same energy that powered their weapons. The architects were ancient beings of living stone, 10 feet tall and incredibly strong. They had ruled the galaxy for millions of years, and they looked down on younger species like insects. But when Pete's Marines attacked their mining operation, the stone giants learned that insects could have very sharp stings. "Take the mines," Pete ordered his troops. "Free our people. Show these rocks what humans can do when we're angry." The battle was brief but brutal. The architects tried to use their advanced weapons, but the humans had spent 25 years learning to fight with whatever they could find. When their guns ran out of power, they used their hands. When their armor was damaged, they kept fighting anyway. The human slaves in the mines had been working under terrible conditions for decades, but they had never given up hope. When they saw Pete's Marines fighting the architects, they joined the battle with mining tools and bare hands. "You came back for us," an old miner said to Pete as the last architect fell. Tears ran down the man's face. "We always believed you would come back." Pete helped the old man to his feet. "We never forgot about you. None of you. Every human taken from Earth is coming home." General Mary Foster coordinated all the attacks from Earth's command center. She had been a young lieutenant when the exile began, but 25 years of planning had made her the greatest military mind humanity had ever produced. Every strike was part of a larger strategy designed to cripple the galaxy's ability to respond to humanity's return. "Phase 1 complete," she reported to President Cole. "We've rescued over 2,000 humans and destroyed 17 enemy installations. The galaxy knows we're back, but they don't know how many of us there are or what we're capable of." Nodded grimly, and their response? "Panic," Mary replied. "They're calling emergency council meetings and mobilizing their fleets, but they're fighting the last war, not this one. They think they're dealing with the same humans they exiled 25 years ago." The Galactic Council sent messages to Earth, demanding explanations for what they called terrorist attacks. They threatened to reform the barrier, to destroy every human ship in space, to turn Earth into a dead rock floating in the void. They received no reply. The humans were done talking. They had spent 25 years listening to alien voices tell them they were monsters. Now it was time to show the galaxy what real monsters looked like. As reports of human attacks reached every world in the galaxy, a new fear began to spread. The species that had celebrated humanity's exile 25 years ago now looked at their skis and wondered if human ships were already there, waiting in the darkness. The burning fleet had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy burned like a star going out in slow motion. What had started as quick strikes against specific targets had grown into a war that touched every corner of known space. Admiral Rick Stone stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue glow of the grow larger as his fleet approached. "Sir, we're receiving surrender signals from the planet's surface," his communications officer reported. "They're offering to release all human prisoners and pay reparations for their crimes." Rick's face remained stone cold. "Tell them it's too late for surrender. They had 25 years to treat our people with dignity. They chose to torture them instead. It was beautiful, covered in crystal cities that sparkled like jewels under their sun. Rick had visited here once as a young officer, back when humans, and called each other friends. The crystal beings had seemed so peaceful then, so advanced. Now he knew the truth about what they did to humans when no one was watching. "Begin the assault," Rick ordered. Human warships moved into attack formation around the planet. Their weapons had been designed specifically to fight crystal-based life forms, energy beams that turned the defensive shields into weapons against them, sonic attacks that shattered their cities like glass. The beautiful crystal spires that had stood for thousands of years fell like broken dreams. Dr. Carol White worked in the research ship that followed behind the attack fleet. She had spent years studying the technology of the architects, the ancient silicon beings who claimed to have created life throughout the galaxy. Now, she used that knowledge to turn their own weapons against them. "The defense grid is down," she reported to Rick. "Their planetary shields are collapsing. The architect technology they relied on is useless against our modifications." Carol had been a graduate student when the exile began. She remembered the day the architects voted to lock humanity away, their voices rumbling with ancient authority as they pronounced judgment on the younger race. Now, she watched their technology fail as human ships broke through defenses that had protected worlds for millions of years. On the planet's surface, Captain Tony Burke led Marine units through the crystal cities. His soldiers moved like ghosts through streets that sparkled with alien light. The who had not fled hid in their buildings, their crystal bodies dim with fear. "Search every building," Tony ordered his troops. "Find our people. Every human on this planet comes home with us." They found the laboratories deep beneath the crystal cities. Hundreds of humans floated in tanks filled with strange liquids. Some had been there for decades, kept alive so they could study how human bodies worked. Others showed signs of surgical procedures that made Tony's stomach turn. "Sir, we found something else," one of his sergeants reported. "Records, thousands of them. They've been documenting everything they did to our people." Tony looked at the data files his sergeant had discovered. Medical experiments, psychological torture, genetic manipulation. They had treated humans like laboratory animals for 50 years, all while pretending to be their allies in the Galactic Council. "Copy everything," Tony ordered. "The galaxy needs to see what really happened here." Meanwhile, the siege of Council Prime continued in the depths of space. The massive station that served as the galaxy's government center was defended by the combined fleets of a dozen species. Commander Adams had been fighting there for 3 weeks, leading her ships in a battle that would determine the future of galactic civilization. "Enemy reinforcements jumping in from the sector," her tactical officer reported. 20 ships, heavy cruiser class." Smiled grimly. The aliens still fought like they had superior technology and numbers. They didn't understand that humans had spent 25 years learning to fight with less and win anyway. "All ships execute Plan 7, she ordered. "Time to show them what we learned during the exile." Human ships scattered like leaves in the wind, then reformed in patterns that confused the alien fleets. They struck from unexpected angles, used the enemy's own formations against them, and disappeared before return fire could reach them. It was a kind of warfare the galaxy had never seen before. "Ma'am, we're getting reports from across the galaxy," her communications officer announced. "Human descendants on every colonized world are rising up. They're taking control of their planets and joining our forces." Felt her heart swell with pride. The humans who had been scattered across the galaxy when the exile began had never forgotten their origins. Their children and had grown up as second-class citizens under alien rule, but they had remembered the stories of Earth. Now those stories were coming true. Captain Steve Parker's Marines finally breached the core of Council Prime after weeks of fighting. The ancient chamber where humanity had been judged and condemned now echoed with the sound of human boots on alien floors. The delegates who had voted for humanity's exile cowered behind their desks as armed humans entered their sacred space. "Secure the chamber," Steve ordered. "No one leaves until we're done here." The Council Prime itself, the ancient being who had presided over humanity's trial, tried to speak with the same authority it had used 25 years ago. "You cannot do this. The Galactic Treaty protects this chamber. You are violating every law of civilized space." Steve removed his helmet and looked directly at the ancient creature. "You forfeited the right to talk about civilized behavior when you let our people be tortured and enslaved. The old treaty is dead. We're here to write a new one." Admiral Rick Stone received the message that Council Prime had fallen while his fleet finished securing the Crystal Cities lay in ruins, but every human prisoner had been freed. The galaxy's most powerful government center was under human control. The war was effectively over. "Sir, we're receiving surrender offers from 17 different species," his communications officer reported. "They're all asking for mercy." Rick thought about the human children who had been taken from their families, the colonists who had been used as medical test subjects, the miners who had been worked to death in alien facilities. The mercy the galaxy had shown to humanity over the past 25 years. "Tell them we'll consider their surrenders," Rick replied, "after they've answered for their crimes." The galaxy that had once looked down on humanity as a young and violent species now trembled before human fleets. The war for remembrance was nearly over, but the real work of building a new galactic order was just beginning. The species that had exiled humanity would learn what justice looked like when it came from the hands of those who had suffered their cruelty. In the ruins of crystal cities and the smoking wreckage of alien fleets, a new truth was being written across the stars. Humanity had returned, not as the monsters they had been accused of being, but as something far more dangerous. Humans with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The great council chamber of New Harmony Station looked very different from the old one, where humanity had been condemned 25 years ago. President Cole sat in the central chair where the Council Prime had once ruled. But she was not alone. Representatives from every species in the galaxy surrounded her, but now humans sat as equals among them instead of as junior partners begging for acceptance. The trial of the former Galactic Council had lasted 6 months. Dr. Lisa Carter, now old but still sharp, presented evidence that shocked even the humans who thought they knew the full extent of alien cruelty. The medical experiments had been worse than anyone imagined. The slavery had been more widespread. The conspiracy to eliminate humanity had roots going back centuries. "The evidence shows systematic genocide disguised as quarantine," Lisa announced to the packed chamber. "The accused species didn't exile humanity to protect the galaxy. They exiled us because they feared what we might become." The delegate, its crystal form dim with shame, tried one last time to defend its people's actions. "We believed humans were dangerous. Your history showed violence and aggression. We acted to preserve galactic peace." Admiral Jake, now an old man but still wearing his uniform with pride, stood slowly from his seat. His voice carried the weight of years spent watching his people suffer. "You want to talk about violence? Let me tell you about violence. Violence is taking children from their families for experiments. Violence is working people to death in your minds. Violence is turning friends into laboratory animals." Jake paused, looking directly at each of the accused delegates. "You created monsters by treating us like monsters, but even monsters can choose justice over revenge." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew that humanity could have wiped out every species that had voted for their exile. Human fleets controlled the galaxy now. Human technology was centuries ahead of anything their former oppressors possessed. But instead of extermination, humanity had chosen trials. Instead of revenge, they had chosen justice. Commander Adams, now promoted to admiral, presented the terms of the new Galactic Accord. The old council structure was dissolved completely. The new government would be based on equality rather than the ancient prejudices that had ruled for millions of years. No species will be judged by their past, announced. No species will be considered superior to any other, and no species will ever again have the power to exile another from the galaxy they all share. The representative, floating nervously in its gas-filled container, asked the question that every alien in the chamber was thinking. What happens to us now? What happens to our people? Captain Ben Hayes, now a general despite his advanced age, answered with words that would be remembered for centuries. You will be treated the way you should have treated us, with dignity, with respect, with the understanding that we are all part of the same galaxy. The new laws were harsh but fair. The species that had committed crimes against humanity would pay reparations, but they would not be destroyed. Their governments would be reformed, but their people would not be enslaved. War crimes would be punished, but entire civilizations would not be wiped out. The architect delegate, its stone body ancient beyond measure, spoke for the first time since the trials began. Why do you show us mercy? We showed you none. President Cole answered, her voice carrying the wisdom of a leader who had guided her people through their darkest hour. Because that's what separates us from you. You feared we would become monsters, so you tried to destroy us. We became something you never expected instead. We became better. The signing of the new Galactic Accord took place on Earth, in the rebuilt city of New York. Representatives from 47 species came to the world they had once imprisoned, now free to see what humanity had accomplished during their exile. They saw cities that touched the clouds. They saw technology that seemed like magic. They saw a people who had turned suffering into strength. But most importantly, they saw forgiveness. Dr. Brooks, now the head of the new Galactic Science Council, stood in his laboratory with delegates from species that had once been enemies. We could have used our technology to conquer you, he told them. Instead, we want to use it to help you grow. The children who played in the gardens of New Harmony Station were different from the children of the old galaxy. Human and alien young ones learned together, played together, and grew up believing that cooperation was stronger than competition. The fear and hatred that had driven their parents to war was replaced by curiosity and friendship. Captain Helen Ward, now retired but still proud, watched these children and remembered the anger that had driven humanity for 25 years. We spent so long preparing for war, she told her granddaughter, a little girl who played with crystal children as if they were siblings. I'm glad you get to prepare for peace instead. The galaxy that emerged from humanity's return was not the same one that had existed before. The old empire of ancient species ruling over younger ones was gone forever. In its place was something new, a true federation where every voice mattered and every species contributed to the whole. Admiral Kate, now in charge of the new Galactic Defense Force, commanded ships crewed by humans and aliens working side by side. The weapons that had once been turned against each other were now used to protect trade routes and defend peaceful worlds from the few remaining pirates and criminals who threatened galactic stability. Sir, we're receiving a distress signal from the Outer Rim, her communications officer reported. It was a young who had chosen to serve under human command. Pirate attack on a refugee convoy. Kate smiled as she gave the order to respond. All ships, set course for the Outer Rim. Time to show these pirates what the new galaxy thinks of people who prey on the innocent. As her fleet jumped to hyperspace, Kate thought about how much had changed. Once, humans had fought each other in bitter warfare. Now they fought together to protect those who could not protect themselves. The exile was over. The age of fire had ended. The new galaxy was built on the ashes of the old, stronger and more united than anything that had come before. The species that had once feared humanity's potential had learned the hardest lesson of all, that humans, when pushed to their breaking point, don't break. They become something the universe has never seen before. And in the end, what they had become was not monsters or conquerors, but teachers who showed the galaxy what it truly meant to be civilized.